My name is Cassidy Monroe. I'm 38 years old, and tonight, my sister's husband looked me in the face and said, "We don't serve beggars here." Loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Loud enough that the valet actually turned around to stare. I stood there, heels clicking too loud, mouth too dry. In a room I used to be welcome in. At a table I helped pay for. Surrounded by people who once called me family. Ever been treated like a stranger at your own sister's party? Drop a comment if you've ever shown up. And realize they'd moved on without telling you. Because what happened next wasn't just cruel. It was planned. And trust me when I tell you what they tried to take from me. You'll understand why I didn't walk away empty-handed. Let me rewind. 15 minutes earlier, I pulled up, right on time. The place was too shiny to feel warm. All glass railings, brushed brass, dim lighting meant to flatter expensive shoes. I handed the valet my keys and said the reservation was under Kerrigan. He blinked, paused, then asked, "Are you with catering?" That should have been my first clue. I laughed, soft and awkward, and corrected him. He handed me a ticket like I was someone's +1 who'd overstayed her welcome. Inside, it only got colder. Not from air conditioning, but from recognition. Or rather, the lack of it. Not one head turned when I walked in. Not from the Kerrigans. Not even from my sister. Natalie was seated near the center of the main room, wearing a deep plum wrap dress that probably had a name more expensive than mine. She looked radiant. Polished. Photograph ready. Next to her was Blake, her husband, my humiliation. Holding court with that easy, oily charm he wore like cologne. Their daughter Harper sat on the edge of the table, playing with her napkin, until she noticed me. "That's her," Harper said, smirking. "The one Mom's helping. Like a charity case." No whisper. No shame. I smiled because that's what polite women do when someone steps on their throat. We smile through it. We pretend we didn't hear. I approached the hostess. "Hi, I'm supposed to have a seat with the Kerrigan party." She glanced at the screen, then back at me. I knew the look. It was the kind people reserve for someone who wandered in off the street. "I'm sorry, that name isn't listed." "I RSVP'd 2 weeks ago," I said, voice already climbing toward 2. "Nice. I brought a gift. I even sent the menu selection back." Blake appeared then, moving with that practiced confidence of someone who's never been told no in his life. Well, Cassidy." He said my name like it was a punchline. "I wasn't expecting you." His grin didn't reach his eyes. "I RSVP'd." Natalie confirmed. Must have been a mix-up." He turned to the hostess, louder now. "She's not on the list. We're full." Then he turned back to me, voice just loud enough to float across the marble floors. "We don't serve beggars here. Maybe try the shelter downtown?" Laughter. Not loud but enough. Someone actually clinked a wine glass. I stood there, perfect posture, frozen face. Every cell in my body screaming to run, to shout, to disappear. But I didn't. I nodded, turned away, and walked past him. Like I'd been on my way to the bathroom the whole time. Nobody stopped me. Not even Natalie. Outside, the Kansas air was damp and oddly sweet. Like a storm wanted to come but didn't have the courage. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I drove. No destination. Just away. Eventually, I pulled off near a Lutheran church I hadn't stepped inside since Mom's funeral. I parked. Saturday. Let the hum of the engine fade. Then, on instinct, I reached into my purse. There it lay stuck between my planner and a half-empty lipstick. Mom's old hymnal. I'd grabbed it out of habit weeks ago. For comfort. For nostalgia. I opened it with no real purpose. And there, between blessed assurance and nearer my God to thee, was an envelope. Old, yellowed, labeled in her handwriting. Inside, a single folded deed. Property name. Monroe Farm. Owner, Cassidy Monroe. He blinked, once, twice. That land was supposed to be sold. That's what Blake told me. That's what Natalie swore Mom had changed. But my name was right there. Clean. Undisputed. Notarized before the diagnosis. I sat still for what felt like years. Not because I didn't understand, but because I finally did. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd erased me. The deed sat on my kitchen table like it might explode. I hadn't turned on the lights yet. Didn't want to. The glow from the street lamp outside gave everything a kind of shadowy honesty. I slid the paper out again, just to be sure. There it was. Monroe Farm. Cassidy Monroe. Notarized. Legal. Undeniable. Funny how one page could rattle an entire family myth. I took a shaky breath and reached for my phone. The last photo I had of Mom sat on the lock screen. She was on the porch, wrapped in a faded quilt, holding the very hymnal I'd just pulled the deed from. She had tucked it there for a reason. And I'd almost missed it. I stared at her for a long minute, then flipped through my texts, looking for something from Natalie. Nothing. Just a message from 6 months ago. Hope you're doing okay, we'll handle everything on our end. Like I hadn't grown up in that house too. Like grief gave them permission to make the rules without me. A knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, there was no one there. Just a thick white box on the welcome mat, tied up in one of those satin ribbons you only see in influencer posts. There was a card taped to the top. Natalie's handwriting. Thought you'd want a copy, N. No return address. No apology. Just the same curated cruelty she'd mastered since college. I brought it inside, untied the ribbon, and opened the lid. A family photo book. Thick, heavy, smelled like new ink. The cover read, "The Kerrigan Legacy, 3 Generations of Love." I don't know what I expected. But it wasn't this. Page after page, carefully captioned. Holidays. Vacations, graduations. In the background of one, I spotted myself barely. Just the edge of my shoulder. Out of focus. Not named. In another, I was holding Harper, my niece, back when she was still a toddler. The photo had been cropped just above my nose. My arms were there, my face was not. And then there was the Thanksgiving spread. Full chair. I had been there. I remembered bringing the cranberry sauce. But I wasn't in the shot. Wasn't even mentioned in the caption. I flipped to the back. The final spread read, "The Kerrigans, our legacy, our future." No Aunt Cass. No mention of Monroe. Not even a childhood photo. I closed the book and sat with it in my lap. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was a rewrite. I got up, walked to my bookshelf, and pulled down the old accordion folder I hadn't touched in 2 years. Inside were my mom's estate documents. Originals. Marked up copies. Emails I printed out just in case. Back when I still believed families handled things together. I found the will. The version I remembered. And then, the one they filed. Side by side on the table. The original had a section titled Legacy Preservation, naming me as the sole inheritor of the Monroe farmhouse and the land attached. The one Natalie filed after the funeral? No such section. Just her and Blake listed as trustees of the entire estate. I scanned the dates. The version with my name? Signed 4 weeks before Mom entered hospice. The revised one? Signed 3 days before her death. My breath caught. I remembered that weekend. I'd been in Colorado, giving a guest lecture on estate ethics. I had the itinerary, the photos, the confirmation emails. And I hadn't even known Mom was moved into hospice. No one told me. Not until the next Monday. By then, she was already gone. I picked up the photo book again. It felt heavier now. The pages weren't just glossy paper. They were bricks, stacked and mortared with silence. I sat back on the couch, the old floor creaking beneath me, and whispered to no one. They didn't just forget me. They erased me. Outside, the street lamp flickered once. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel numb. I felt awake. Not angry. Not yet. But close. Very, very close. The photo book was still on the table when my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first. Didn't want to answer anyone. Didn't want to be reasonable. But when it buzzed again, I glanced at the screen. Aunt Lorraine. I hadn't heard from her in months. Not since the funeral. Not since she handed me a casserole dish and a rehearsed line about how family pulls through together. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Cassidy, she sighed. The kind of sigh that already has disappointment stitched into it. I heard you're stirring things up. This isn't you. You've always been the calm one. There it was. That family script. That quiet suggestion that standing up for yourself is somehow ungrateful. I'm not stirring anything, Aunt Lorraine. I paused, unsure how to package betrayal into a sentence that wouldn't sound bitter. You just what? She cut in. You want to drag your sister through the mud over paperwork? Paperwork. The word landed sharp. As if a life's worth of promises could be flattened by a signature. I swallowed. They changed the will. After Mom was too sick to know what was happening. Silence. Then another sigh. You're better than this. That's what she said. Not, is that true? Not, how can I help? Just the tired refrain. You're better than this. As if being better meant being quiet. Being gracious. Being invisible. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear. Aunt Lorraine, Mom wouldn't have wanted this. She would have wanted peace, she snapped back. And you're shoving peace out the door for what? Some dusty piece of land? Cassidy, I know you're grieving, but good daughters don't sue their own family. That line stuck in my throat. Good daughters don't sue. What about daughters who get erased? What about daughters who keep receipts because no one else will? I bit my lip hard enough to taste iron and whispered, "Thanks for calling." Then I hung up before she could remind me that Natalie's the one who sends the holiday cards now. My hand trembled as I set the phone down. Not from anger. From restraint. I didn't owe anyone politeness. Not anymore. The weight of the photo book pressed against my thigh. I pushed it away and walked to the bookshelf where Mom's Bible still sat. I hadn't touched it in months. Not since we'd packed her things, and I'd grabbed it without thinking. When I cracked it open, a slip of yellow paper fluttered out. A post-it. Her handwriting. Cass, if they forget, you remember. Just that. No date. No signature. But I knew her slanted loops. I knew the way she wrote my name. I knew she meant it. I traced the ink with my thumb and felt something shift. Not big, not cinematic. Just a quiet click inside me. My heart thudded in my ears. On the table, my laptop glowed. I sat down and pulled up the browser. Typed. Kansas Estate Attorneys. One name caught my eye. Deidre Chen. Specializes in inheritance disputes. I hovered over the contact form. My fingers twitched over the keyboard. Typed. I need to review a potential issue with my mother's will. I stared at it. Read it back. Deleted the word potential. I added my number. Left the message blank. Hovered over send. Then, I closed the tab. Not yet. I wasn't afraid. But I wasn't ready either. I leaned back in my chair and picked up the post-it again. Mom's handwriting. If they forget, you remember. Maybe remembering wasn't enough anymore. But it was a start. I folded the note carefully, slid it into my wallet behind my driver's license, and whispered to no one. I'm not finished. Outside, the street lamp flickered again. And this time, it stayed on. By morning, the sky was the color of dishwater. One of those Kansas days that couldn't decide between rain or just looking miserable. I pulled on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and headed to the storage unit I hadn't opened since the week after Mom's funeral. The drive was short, but my stomach stayed tight the whole way. Not because I didn't know what I'd find, but because I did. Unit 117. Same dent in the roll-up door. Same padlock with my birth year as the code. I opened it slowly. The familiar smell hit first: dust, paper, the faint sweetness of old cedar from Mom's blanket chest. Most of it was packed away in bins. Holiday decorations. A busted toaster I kept meaning to toss. Some boxes labeled Cass, College. But at the back, under a faded comforter, was what I came for. A gray binder. Heavy. Warped at the corners. Labeled in Mom's handwriting. Estate, active. I knelt and pulled it out like it might crumble. Inside were plastic sleeves stuffed with everything. Tax returns. Bank statements, life insurance info, power of attorney docs. And right near the middle, a bright green tab marked, Trust. I opened it. There it was. The original revocable trust. Signed, witnessed. Clear as day. Cassidy Monroe, named as sole successor trustee of Monroe Farm and all attached assets. The date? Nearly a year before Mom's diagnosis. Long before anyone could argue she wasn't of sound mind. I sank back onto the concrete floor, binder across my knees. A spider darted under a box in the corner, but I didn't move. My eyes kept tracing one sentence. This trust shall supersede all prior property arrangements not expressly revoked. I remembered Mom saying once, I made it easy for you. It's all there if they try anything. I hadn't known what she meant. I'd been too tired. Too numb. Too trusting. I shut the binder and hugged it to my chest like a kid clinging to a life raft. Just then, a voice startled me from the entrance. Didn't think anyone used these units on Sundays. It was Mr. Jenkins' mom's old neighbor. He managed a nearby lot and sometimes dropped by to check on things. He nodded toward me, half curious, half wary. Haven't seen you in a while. Thought maybe you gave it all up. I stood, brushing dust off my jeans. Just needed some paperwork. He squinted. Natalie said you were stepping away from everything. Said you didn't want the hassle. Oh, whoa. There it was. That slow, casual rewrite. They didn't say I'd been erased. They said I walked out. I didn't answer. Just nodded politely. But inside? Something sharpened. I'd stayed quiet long enough to let them write their version. But I had the pen now. Back home, I laid the binder on the table next to the will and the deed. 3 pieces of paper. 3 versions of the same story. Only one of them told the truth. I opened my laptop and pulled up Deidre Chen's website again. This time, I didn't hesitate. I clicked. Contact. Typed. My name is Cassidy Monroe. I need help verifying the validity of my mother's estate documents. I have originals. Then I hit send. No second guessing. No backspacing. Just a steady exhale. The binder sat there, its plastic sleeves catching the light like armor. I wasn't rushing into war. But I wasn't retreating either. Deidre Chen's office didn't look like the kind of place where people went to wage war. It looked more like an old library. Framed diplomas, soft lamp lighting, leather chairs that made no noise when you sat in them. Peaceful. Until you looked at the walls. Every inch lined with neatly labeled files. Names. Dates. Case numbers. I sat across from her and placed the binder between us. She didn't open it right away. Cassidy, she said gently. Do you still have the version of the will from before your mother went into hospice? I nodded. It's in there. Page 23. Green tab. Deidre flipped through, fingers steady, eyes sharp. She didn't react much. Didn't need to. Her silence was louder than any gasp. Then she spoke. This signature, this one filed by your sister, do you know? Where you were the weekend of March 3rd? He blinked. That date was burned into me now. Colorado. I was speaking at a legal ethics panel. I still have the program and the flight receipt. Deidre leaned back slowly. Your mother was moved into hospice March 2nd. This version of the will was signed March 3rd. That's fast. A pause. And she was comatose by then, according to medical records. My stomach turned. Not because I didn't already suspect, but because hearing it aloud made it real. She couldn't have signed anything, I said quietly. She didn't even open her eyes that last week. Deidre nodded once. No drama. Exactly. She turned to her keyboard and typed something fast. Let me pull something up. A few seconds later, she spun the monitor toward me. This is the access log from the shared Dropbox your family used for estate files. We subpoenaed the metadata on a different case last year. It's pretty airtight. She pointed to one name. Blake Kerrigan. Accessed, March 3rd. Modified. March 3rd. File, will, revised, final. PDF. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. Blake doesn't even have legal training, I whispered. Deidre gave me a flat look. You don't need training to delete someone's name. I sat back, cold down to my ribs. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't grief. It wasn't family mess. It was fraud. And they thought I wouldn't look. They probably assumed I wouldn't fight it, I muttered. Deidre folded her hands. They underestimated the wrong woman. Cassidy 9. That line landed heavier than I expected. Because part of me had underestimated myself too. I picked up the binder again. One of the plastic sleeves had a red ink smudge across the top. I remembered that pen. Mom used it when she was trying to be extra clear. It bled through everything. I touched the stain gently. It felt like a fingerprint. Not her actual print. But her intention. I want to go forward, I said. Deidre didn't blink. We'll start with a motion to preserve all digital records. Then we'll contact their attorney. She paused. You're sure? I nodded. Good, she said. Because once we start, there's no halfway. I looked down at the red ink. No halfway. I repeated. And for the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel erased. I felt written in bold. The first sign something was off came the next morning when I tried to access the Monroe family archive. That's what they used to call it. A shared Google Drive folder Mom had set up before things got bad. Photos, scanned documents, joint accounts, medical directives. It was meant to keep everything transparent. Which now felt like a cruel joke. I typed in the password I'd used for years. Error. I tried again. Error. On the third attempt, I clicked Forgot Password. Oh. A message popped up. No account associated with this email. My chest tightened. I tried another folder I knew had a scanned copy of the power of attorney. Gone. All of it. Gone. I refreshed. Cleared my cache. Checked on a second browser. Still nothing. I opened our old family group chat, Monroe Legacy Matters. Empty. No history. No thread. Just a blank screen and a message that read, "You were removed from this group." Not left. Removed. The difference burned. I sat still for a minute. Just breathing. Just staring at the monitor like it might apologize. It didn't. I picked up my phone and pulled up the county property search tool. Typed in Monroe Farm. There it was. Current owners. Natalie Kerrigan and Blake Kerrigan. Not Cassidy Monroe. Not even disputed. Just them. I felt the back of my throat tighten. But not with grief. With grit. Because now I knew this wasn't just about silencing me. It was about making it look like I'd never existed at all. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. Opened the junk drawer. The one where we all store receipts and coupons and batteries that don't work. There, underneath a stack of expired Bed Bath & Beyond flyers, was a flash drive. Blue. Scratched. Labeled in Sharpie. Cass, old LLC stuff. I plugged it in. And there it was. An active EIN. A digital seal. Cassidy Monroe Consulting, LLC, still registered. Still mine. I'd opened it years ago when I thought I might freelance after leaving the firm. Hadn't done much with it since. But it still had legal standing. Which meant I had a door they couldn't lock me out of. I smiled. For the first time that day, it felt like something was tilting back in my direction. I created a new folder on my desktop. Named it Audit, Kerrigan, Fraud. I started uploading everything. Original deed. Signed trust. Metadata screenshots. Screenshots from the blank group chat. Receipts. My receipts. I wasn't documenting this to make a scene. I wasn't doing it for drama. I was doing it so when the time came. And someone tried to say, she's just being emotional. I'd have everything lined up in black and white. I paused halfway through and looked at the LLC seal again. It had my name, my initials, my signature. They couldn't scrub me from that. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same system they'd used to shut me out. I was about to use it to walk back in. But this time, I wasn't asking for a seat at the table. I was building my own. I hadn't planned on going back. But that night, around 8 o'clock, I found myself turning onto Willow Ridge Lane. Without even realizing where I was headed. Mom's house, my house, one still looked the same from the outside. White paint. Front porch with the same chipped swing. Light on in the kitchen, like she might still be in there warming up leftovers. But I knew better. Natalie had the keys now. Or thought she did. I parked across the street, heart thudding harder than I'd expected. I didn't get out right away. Then a knock on my window made me jump. It was Gloria, our old housekeeper. 60-something, steady as ever, with her purse on one shoulder and car keys in the other. I saw the car, she said, smiling softly. Didn't think you'd come back. I rolled down the window. Just passing by. Gloria didn't buy it. She never did. I have something for you, she said. Your mama told me to give it to you if things ever went sideways. I knew craft. She reached into her tote and pulled out a manila folder. Faded. Taped shut, labeled in that familiar handwriting. Cass Privet. Cass. My throat tightened. She gave this to you? Gloria nodded. A week before she got real sick. Said if they ever tried to rewrite her wishes, you'd know. I held the folder in my lap like it was a living thing. Thank you. Gloria hesitated. She knew who'd fight for her, even when she couldn't say it out loud. And are. Then she squeezed my shoulder and walked back to her car. I sat there for a moment in the dark, cradling the folder. Then I drove home, not trusting myself to open it in that driveway. Back at my kitchen table, I cut the tape gently. Inside were two things. A folded letter. And a USB drive, wrapped in a piece of Mom's old dish towel. I unfolded the letter first. The paper was creased and thin from being handled. Her handwriting was shaky, but still hers. Cass, if you're reading this, it means they're doing what I feared they might. I couldn't stop them. But I tried to leave you enough to start with. The USB has a video. It's not long. I filmed it the week I signed the trust. You'll know what to do with it. They may have louder voices, but you carry the truth. Don't let them bury you. Mom. I wiped my eyes before I even realized they were wet. Not because she'd said something dramatic, but because she'd said just enough. She knew. She saw it coming. The erasure. The revision. The silence they'd wrap around my name. I plugged the USB into my laptop. The screen blinked once, then lit up. There she was. Hair thinner. Face soft. Sweater slipping off one shoulder. But her eyes? Sharp as ever. I made this in case they get ideas, she said in the video. Cass is my executor. Cass gets the farm. No changes, no funny business. You boys better not try me. She smiled a little. Cass, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I know this put you in a spot, but I trust you more than anyone. The video cut off before I was ready. But the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt sacred, like the moment after someone says, I love you. And you know they meant every syllable. I copied the file twice. Once to my hard drive. Once to the secure evidence folder. Then I slipped the letter into a plastic sleeve and labeled it, intent, handwritten. They'd tried to make me feel alone. But I wasn't. She'd been speaking this whole time. I just hadn't known where to listen. The records office smelled like old paper and printer toner. Not dramatic. Not dangerous. But exactly the kind of place where quiet power changes hands. I waited in line behind a man asking about a zoning permit and a woman trying to track down her ex-husband's lien release. When it was my turn, the clerk looked up with a practiced smile. Morning. What can I help you with? I need to pull the most recent deed on Monroe Farm. Original, not the summary. She tilted her head. That's the one out on Old Ridgetop. I nodded. Yes, ma'am. She typed something into her keyboard, the click of her nails tapping out the truth one keystroke at a time. Let's see. A pose. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly. Well, That sound, that little surprised, hulled me more than I was ready for. What is it? I asked, keeping my voice steady. She swiveled the screen so I could see. Looks like it was filed under your name back in 2018. Cassidy Monroe. That you? Yes, I said. And no amendments? She shook her head. There's a claim filed for reassignment by Natalie Kerrigan about 6 months ago. But it was rejected. Missing notarization and title consent. I blinked. So legally. She finished for me. It's still yours. A strange, hollow sound filled my ears. I realized it was my own exhale. I'd like a certified copy, I said. Of course. I'll print and stamp it while you wait. She started clicking again, then paused. Smart of her to use your name back then. I looked at her. My mom, I said. She knew what she was doing. The woman gave a soft nod, like she understood more than she was saying. While she stepped away to process the file, I stood at the edge of the counter, staring out the window. Outside, the wind pushed dry leaves across the sidewalk in little spirals. I thought about every version of the story Natalie had sold. How I walked away. How I didn't want the hassle. How I wasn't strong enough to carry the family name. But what they didn't count on. What they never understood. Was that my strength didn't look like Blake's swagger or Natalie's perfect Instagram captions. It looked like this. Getting the paper. Pulling the proof. Doing the work in silence. The clerk returned and slid the file toward me. One sheet. Embossed stamp. Date. Signature. My name. Cassidy Monroe. Owner of record. I held it in my hands like it might disappear. But it didn't. It felt heavier than it looked. Like everything I had been carrying finally had weight in the real world. I slipped it into my folder marked Evidence. And tucked that folder into the tote bag with Mom's USB, the original trust, the letter, the LLC seal. It was starting to look less like a file and more like a future. Back in the car, I turned off the radio and sat still. It hit me. They didn't just fail to take the deed. They never had it to begin with. They'd built a throne on the assumption I wouldn't check. But now I had everything. Not to start a war. Not to humiliate them. Just enough to reclaim what was already mine. I arrived 10 minutes early. The conference room smelled like fresh coffee and photocopier ink, neutral and sterile, like every uncomfortable meeting you're not allowed to walk out of. Natalie was already seated, scrolling her phone. Blake stood by the window with a smug half-smile, hands in his pockets like he was waiting for a waiter to bring the wine list. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. Just annoyed. Blake was the first to speak. Well, Cassidy Monroe. I wasn't sure you'd show. I set my bag down in the chair across from him. Calm, focused, silent. Natalie didn't look up from her phone. Let's just get this over with. Deidre walked in right behind me, all steel in a navy blazer. She gave a curt nod and slid a slim manila folder onto the table. Thank you both for coming. Miss Monroe has some documents to clarify before we move forward. Blake chuckled like we were at a barbecue. This about the farm? Look, I get it. You're hurt. But dragging family into court? Over dirt and nostalgia? I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out the certified deed. Stamped, embossed. My name in ink. I'm not dragging anyone. I'm restoring what was taken. Blake leaned forward, trying the charming grin. Oh, come on, Cass. It's a misunderstanding, a clerical mix-up. No need to get legal. Natalie finally spoke. Sharp, controlled. She's always been like this, so dramatic. Everything has to be a battle. Deidre opened the folder and slid across the notarized trust, the metadata logs, and my mother's handwritten letter. According to these records, she said coolly, Cassidy is the legal owner and successor trustee. The reassignment request was denied. And the digital access trail clearly shows unauthorized modifications originating from your household. Blake's smile faltered, just slightly. Natalie crossed her arms. You know she was sick. She wasn't thinking clearly. My voice was even, unshaken. She filmed a video a week before hospice. Clear mind, clear intent. I pulled out the flash drive and placed it on the table. I brought a copy. You're welcome to view it. Natalie pushed her chair back. This isn't about land. It's about resentment. About playing the victim like you always do. For a moment, that old reflex kicked in. That pull in my chest to explain, to soften, to apologize for making them uncomfortable. But it passed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized. She wasn't defending Mom. She was defending the version of the story where I didn't exist. I turned to Deidre and nodded. She pulled out one final envelope. Effective immediately, she said, sliding it toward Blake. This is formal notice that the Monroe property is not legally in your possession. Any attempts to occupy, lease, or represent the estate as your own will be met with legal response. Blake's jaw twitched. This is how you want to play it? He asked. I stood. This isn't play, it's paperwork. He looked like he wanted to say more. But Natalie grabbed her purse and walked out without another word. Deidre and I packed our things in silence. As we left the room, I caught Blake looking down at the notice in his hand. Mouth tight, eyes darting. For once, he had nothing to say. And I didn't need him to. I had said what mattered. On paper. With proof. I didn't expect the silence after the confrontation to feel louder than the room itself. The next few days passed in a strange kind of stillness. No dramatic emails. No lawsuits filed. No public blowback. But I knew better. The silence wasn't peace. It was planning. By day 3, I started hearing whispers. A friend from church texted, saw Natalie's post, that about you? Then came a call from one of my former clients. She said you forged something. Said your mom was out of it, and you manipulated the paperwork. I didn't defend myself. I just thanked them for calling. Truth doesn't shout. It just waits. But the worst blow came in the softest voice. I was walking out of the grocery store, half a cart full, not even sure what I'd bought. When I heard a voice behind me. Aunt Cass? I turned. It was Harper. 13 now. Taller than I remembered. Ponytail pulled tight, hoodie sleeves too long. She looked nervous. Awkward. Hey. I said, cautiously hopeful. She kicked at the ground. Mom says you lied. That you stole the farm. I swallowed. That old instinct to shrink down, to smooth things over, came rushing back like muscle memory. But I took a breath. Do you believe that? I asked. She didn't answer. I knelt down a little, so we were eye to eye. People say a lot when they're scared, I said. But I didn't steal anything. I kept the truth from disappearing. Harper nodded slowly, eyes blinking fast. She reached into her backpack and pulled out something wrapped in tissue paper. I kept this, she said. Don't tell Mom. I unwrapped it gently. An old scrapbook. Handmade. Blue cover. Lopsided glitter letters. Cass and Harper. Photos of us from when she was little, me teaching her how to plant tomatoes, reading stories in the attic, the summer we tried to bake a pie and used salt instead of sugar. Tears burned the back of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Why'd you keep it? I asked. Harper shrugged. Felt like if I threw it out, it'd mean you never happened. I hugged her. Tight. Longer than I should have. You never have to erase people just because someone tells you to, I whispered. She pulled back, gave me a shy smile. Okay, Miss Cass. I froze. Nobody had called me that in years. Not since she was 5 and couldn't say aunt. I smiled. It was small, but it held more weight than 1,000 apologies from her parents ever could. Later that night, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, I saw the email. Subject line, Women in Law Annual, Speaker Invitation. I almost deleted it. Assumed it was spam. But it wasn't. It was real. They'd seen my case. Heard how I stood my ground without breaking character. Would you consider speaking about estate advocacy for women? The message read. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because for the first time in a long time, someone was asking me to take up space. Not because I'd survived something, but because I had something to say. The day of the speaking event, I woke up before the alarm. Not out of nerves. Out of something quieter. Something closer to knowing. The outfit I chose wasn't fancy, just a navy blouse, dark jeans, and boots I'd had for 5 years. But in the pocket of that blouse, I slid something small and silver. Mom's locket. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. Inside was a photo of her on one side, and me as a toddler on the other. Back when life was soft. Before inheritance meant battle. The conference was being held at a hotel near downtown, one of those converted brick spaces with too much parking and never enough power outlets. I arrived early and walked through the crowd of women checking in. Some carried briefcases. Others held notebooks like armor. I didn't know any of them. But oddly, I didn't feel out of place. When they called my name backstage, I felt that old tightening in my chest. That ache I used to get sitting at the kids' table during holidays, where I'd watch my sister laugh with the grown-ups, while I passed napkins and kept my elbows in. Funny how long it takes to outgrow a table you were never allowed to leave. Cassidy Monroe? The coordinator whispered. You're up in 2. I nodded. Smiled politely. Then stood there, alone, behind the curtain. Just me. And the sound of my mother's voice in my head. If they forget, you remember. I touched the locket in my pocket. And stepped out. The stage was smaller than I expected. The microphone didn't work at first. I laughed, gently. The crowd did too. When it settled, I began. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not just on this stage, I mean. I wasn't supposed to speak up, to ask questions, or to push back when people tried to rewrite what was true. At Pause. I come from a family that valued image, where legacy was spoken in polite tones and passed around like serving dishes. And I didn't fit the mold. Some women nodded. Some lowered their eyes. I had to fight not just for land or paperwork, but for my own name to be remembered where it mattered most, in my mother's will and in her heart. I told them what I could. Not the whole story. Just the truth. That inheritance is more than property. It's presence. It's memory. It's being written into the story after someone's gone. And being brave enough to stay written in when others try to erase you. As I neared the end, I felt my voice catch. But I didn't stop. I reached into my pocket and gently pressed the locket between my fingers. My mother once left me a note, I said. It said, if they forget, you remember. I looked out over the rows of women. Some young, some gray-haired, some holding tissues in their laps like they already knew what was coming. I remembered, I said. Not because I wanted revenge, but because remembering is how we heal. And healing is how we build something better for the women who come after. When I finished, the room was quiet for a second too long. Then the applause came. But I didn't need it. Because this wasn't about being heard. It was about finally, having a seat at the real table. The front porch creaked the same way it always had. Even after everything. The lawyers, the silence, the court filings, the speaking event. This place stayed stubbornly familiar. I unlocked the door with my own key. Not a copy. Not a gate code. Just a plain silver key with my initials on it. Inside, dust hung in the air like a breath waiting to exhale. I didn't rush. I walked slow through each room. Ran my fingers across the fireplace mantel, still chipped on the left corner from when Harper crashed her tricycle into it. Opened the kitchen drawer full of old sauce packets and expired coupons. Touched the worn spot on the rug where Mom used to kneel and fold laundry while humming out of tune. It was all here. No noise. No accusations. Just the house. And me. I made tea. Saturday on the back steps. The garden was overgrown, but not lost. The tomatoes had gone wild, vines curling like they missed someone. I could fix that. Eventually. Then I heard the crunch of gravel. Harper's bike rolled up the drive, helmet crooked, cheeks flushed. She didn't say anything at first. Just walked over and plopped down beside me like she'd always belonged there. We sipped tea and ate some saltines I found in the pantry. Eventually, she pulled something from her backpack. A notebook. Spiral bound. Purple cover. Miss Cass, scribbled across the top in bubble letters. I started writing stuff down, she said. So I don't forget. I swallowed. She opened to a page and pointed at the top. This is about the day I saw you at the grocery store. I thought maybe Mom was right, but I watched your face when you saw me, and that's when I knew she wasn't. I didn't know what to say. Didn't want to say the wrong thing. So I just took a breath. Then I stood, walked inside, and returned with my own notebook. Black leather. Worn. The one Mom had given me when I first started working at the law firm. Blank pages. She called it, the will you write for yourself. I sat down beside Harper. Opened to the first page. And started writing. Not a legal statement. Not a counterclaim. Just a list. Who I loved. What I wanted to leave behind. What I wanted remembered. Legacy isn't a deed or a courtroom win. It's the stories someone else carries forward. With your name whispered through them like a thread. Harper leaned her head on my shoulder. I wrote one last line. She remembered. And closed the book.